Hello, guys. So sadly, I did not have time to uh, do one of these Mrs. Mageras. Or I think we're going to settle on exposing the tea in history. Celine came up with that name. That was a very good name. It's probably my favorite one that she came up with. Exposing tea in history. The only downside doesn't have our names in it or anything, so it's kind of. But I said like exposing the tea in history. I think it just sounds it's a nice ring to it. Anyways, today we're talking about the Dark Ages. Okay. And hopefully you guys already read in your reading about the Dark Ages. But now we're going to kind of see a little bit about what were the Dark Ages. Okay, what are the Dark Ages? Why are they called that? And you can see in that painting that's right there. Right, doesn't look so happy, and for good reasons. All right. So the Dark Ages is a term that's applied to Europe between 1400 and 400 and 1400 AD. Okay, so make sure you, I mean, you don't know that, but keep that in mind that it's between 400 AD and 1400 AD. So about 1,000 years, and specifically, it's in Europe. Okay, it's not anywhere else. It's considered to be in Europe. This is when they called it the Dark Ages, between 400 and 1400 AD, and it's pretty much similar to what they call the Middle Ages. So the Middle Ages is another name for it. Dark Age is the other name. So it's called the Middle Age or Dark Age, and that is what it's called between this time period. Okay, and this is just from a encyclopedia, so it's not a yeah, just the general idea of what it's called is this period, why it's called that. Okay, next slide. So some background information. Let's go. The time period, it starts with the fall of the Roman Empire, okay? The Western Roman Empire, because you remember the Eastern Roman half stays in. So when the Western half of the Roman Empire falls, this starts this Dark Age time. It applies a time between the fall of the Roman Empire and the European Renaissance, okay? So we'll talk about the Renaissance later, but that basically is what's going to end this Dark Ages, okay? So it starts when the Roman Empire falls, the Western Roman Empire falls, and it begins again with the European Renaissance. And we'll talk about that. But Renaissance means rebirth, so it kind of gives you a picture already what's coming up. It's also called the Middle Ages because in the middle of these two important times. That's why they call it this Roman Greek era and European Renaissance. So it's kind of like this area of 1,000 years in history of Europe where it gets glossed over a lot. There's not that much studying of it, and we're going to kind of see why in a second. So yeah, the Dark Ages between them. Why is it called the Dark Ages? Well, sadly, dark usually means bad. Okay, so when you say dark, you're implying that's bad. You say, oh, it's a dark time in my life or something. Same thing with the Dark Ages. When they say the term Dark Ages, they mean this isn't going well. This is bad. Opposed to light, people were in darkness, right? And it's also by Christians to describe darkness. That before Jesus, you're living in darkness, and it kind of keeps that same connotation that being dark, not being dark. That's racist, but that when a time or something's going on in life that's dark, it's bad. Anyways, it starts off with this guy named Petrarch, who's an Italian scholar, and he believed that Europe was dark after the light of the Roman Greek. So Roman and Greek stuff was going on, it was going great, and then it became dark, okay? And one thing to keep in mind is that Petrarch is writing from the Renaissance, so he's not in the Dark Ages writing from this. He's writing what he thinks is out of it, like, oh, we're rediscovering this, we're light again, we're coming good. But he calls this time, whole period before this, these Dark Ages. Why do they call it a Dark Age? Okay, good question. So Europe was in a state of culture where it did not do a couple of things. One thing, it didn't support learning. This is how the story goes, right? That they went from Greek and Roman times where almost everyone knew how to read, write. There were schools, people would hire tutors, to all of a sudden there wasn't that many. A lot of people forgot how to write, how to read. There's now tons of different languages that a lot of times spoken, not written down. They also created very little culture. That's the other argument that people, when they call it Dark Ages, say. They say there was not very much art, literature, architecture. Rome, they had these grand colosseums, these beautiful arches, and all these aqueducts. But then after this, in the Dark Ages, there's really not that much construction going on. There is some, but it's usually wood, temporary things, or some buildings that are just not advanced that you see and you're like, oh, that's not as cool as what they did back in the Roman times. And that's why it's too. Also, because there was a lot of Europe was continually being invaded. You had things like Vikings attacking them, the Mongols would attack them. There's a lot of violence, a lot of wars going on. There were much flourishing. It wasn't that peace that they had of that Pax Romana within history. Also, there was no central government. That kind of goes with the P invading, but there was no one government that really had it all. Instead, it was just a bunch of different countries all kind of fighting over the same things. Also, the economy was bad. There was more starvation. There was less prosperity. Cities were smaller. It would take until the 1800s till a city would eventually get the same size that Rome had been, the city of Rome had been, because Rome had 1 million people in it at its peak, and it wouldn't be until London, I think, until 1880 that there's actually a city that has another 1 million people in it. So it just shows you this, the amount of decline that seemed to happen during the Middle Ages, I mean the Dark Ages, that cities were big, the economy wasn't great, people weren't living as well. Basically, the idea is that this was a miserable place to live, or a miserable time to live. Okay. And so many historians, though, today have disagreed with this. Okay. However, the term still sticks around. Wish I could share that video, but it's just this: bring out your dead, bring out your dead. Have you ever seen the movie Monty Python? It's a joke on that. But this idea that disease, stuff like that, and they think that it might not be the best term to call it, to call this period the Dark Ages. Maybe it's been improperly named. Maybe it should be called something else. And so what you're going to be looking at is you're going to be evaluating yourself tomorrow in class. Was Rome actually in the Dark Ages between 400 and 1400 AD? Was this actually a time of cultural decline? And there's disagreement. I don't know what I believe. There's people that are there's people who are for it and against it today that have studied it a ton. So it's a very interesting thing to study. And tomorrow we have to look into that a little bit more closely and find out, was Europe actually in a dark age? Okay, bye guys.